Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers in Burlington, Vermont. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was 22 and unmarried, a deeply stigmatized situation in the conservative climate of 1940s America. To shield herself and her child from shame, Eleanor's parents decided to raise Ted as their own son. Ted grew up believing that his grandparents were his mother and father, and that his actual mother was his older sister. The secret of his true parentage became one of the earliest lies wrapped around Bundy's life, a theme of deception that would follow him until his death. By the age of 4, Ted and his mother left Vermont and relocated to Tacoma, Washington. There, Eleanor, who began calling herself Louise, met and married Johnny Culpepper Bundy, a hospital cook. Johnny formally adopted Ted, giving him his last name. Yet Ted never truly accepted his stepfather, viewing him as unsophisticated and beneath him. He rarely bonded with Johnny Bundy and often resented the intrusion of his new siblings from the marriage. Even as a boy, Ted seemed to regard himself as separate, perhaps superior, to those around him. From a young age, Ted displayed unsettling behaviors. Family stories would later emerge about his early fascination with knives and dark imagery. One of the more chilling incidents involved his aunt waking up from a nap to find 3-year-old Ted standing silently by her bed, a strange grin on his face, and the bed surrounded by kitchen knives. Though these incidents were often brushed off as childhood oddities, they hinted at the troubled mind within. Despite his internal darkness, Bundy learned quickly how to appear normal. Through childhood and adolescence, he presented himself as polite and intelligent, even while remaining socially awkward. He was introverted and struggled to connect meaningfully with peers, often described as aloof, solitary, and distant. He wasn't a star athlete or a standout scholar. He drifted, blending in but never quite belonging. During high school, Ted began to cultivate a different image. He joined church groups, participated in extracurricular activities, and tried to mimic social confidence. Yet he remained deeply insecure. He was particularly obsessed with class and status, longing for an upper-middle-class lifestyle, tailored clothes, and admiration. This obsession would become more pronounced in his college years, intertwined with his relationships and his developing psychopathy. It was during this time that Bundy met a young woman often referred to under the pseudonym Stephanie Brooks. She was beautiful, wealthy, well-educated, a symbol of everything Ted desired. Their relationship blossomed briefly, and Ted fell deeply in love. But she ended the relationship, criticizing his lack of direction and ambition. For Ted, her rejection was a devastating blow. Many experts believe that this heartbreak served as a psychological trigger, fueling the deep-seated rage and resentment that would later manifest in murder. After high school, Bundy bounced between colleges, enrolling first at the University of Puget Sound and later transferring to the University of Washington, where he majored in psychology. During this time, he tried desperately to appear successful and driven. He volunteered at a suicide prevention hotline, where he worked alongside Anne Rule, who would later write one of the definitive books on Bundy, The Stranger Beside Me. Rule, like many others, found him charming, bright, and surprisingly compassionate, a man who helped save lives by talking people off the ledge, even while secretly nursing fantasies of violence. Bundy graduated in 1972 and soon immersed himself in politics. He worked for the Washington State Republican Party and even attended the 1968 Republican National Convention in Miami. Ambitious and articulate, he became a rising political star, impressing his colleagues with his intelligence and poise. He cultivated a crisp, clean image, often seen in conservative suits, flashing an eager smile. It was a facade of respectability, one he honed to near perfection. Meanwhile, his personal life remained turbulent. In a calculated move, Bundy reconnected with Stephanie Brooks in California. He courted her anew, presenting himself as driven and successful. She agreed to marry him, but as soon as she did, Ted cut off all contact. He simply disappeared from her life. For Bundy, It was a twisted act of revenge, a way to exert ultimate control and win against the woman who had once rejected him. In early 1974, a sinister pattern began to emerge in the Pacific Northwest. Young women started disappearing from college campuses. They were all young, white, attractive, and mostly brunettes with long hair parted in the middle, the very image of Stephanie Brooks. Bundy's victims were not random. They were surrogates for the woman who had wounded his pride. Bundy developed clever lures. He would pretend to be injured, wearing a sling or a cast. Approaching women on campus, he'd ask for help loading books or carrying something to his Volkswagen Beetle. Once the victim was close enough, he struck swiftly, often bludgeoning her unconscious with a crowbar. He would then drive her to a secluded location, where he raped, strangled, and sometimes mutilated her body. Many of his victims were decapitated. Bundy kept some of their heads as trophies, returning to the corpses repeatedly to engage in acts of necrophilia. One of his earliest confirmed murders was Linda Ann Healy, a 21-year-old University of Washington student who disappeared from her basement bedroom in February 1974. Bloodstains and an empty bed were all that remained. Bundy's killings accelerated rapidly after that. By summer 1974, panic gripped the region. 2 young women vanished in broad daylight from Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. Witnesses recalled a polite young man with an arm in a sling, introducing himself as Ted, who approached multiple women asking for help. The audacity of these abductions shocked law enforcement. For the first time, they had a name, a physical description, and a car model, a Volkswagen Beetle. Despite these leads, Bundy slipped through the net. He relocated frequently, often switching between Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Utah. In Utah, he enrolled in law school at the University of Utah, continuing his double life. He seemed like the perfect neighbor or classmate, polite, handsome, intelligent. Behind the scenes, however, he hunted. In Utah, Bundy attacked Carol Duranch in November 1974. Posing as a police officer, he lured her to his car under the guise of investigating a break-in. She managed to escape, kicking free from his car and flagging down help, a rare survivor. Her testimony would later become instrumental in connecting Bundy to the murders. Bundy was finally arrested in August 1975 during a routine traffic stop. Police found burglary tools, crowbar, ski mask, handcuffs in his car. Though initially only charged with possession of stolen property, suspicions mounted. Duranch identified him in a lineup, and Bundy was charged with kidnapping. In 1976, Bundy was convicted of kidnapping Duranch and sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. But even incarceration couldn't contain him. By 1977, while awaiting trial for murder charges in Colorado, Bundy executed 2 daring escapes. The first came when he jumped out of a courthouse window in Aspen, vanishing into the mountains for 6 days before being recaptured. The second was even bolder. Bundy sawed a hole in the ceiling of his cell, dropped into a guard's apartment, and simply walked out the front door. From Colorado, Bundy made his way to Florida, arriving in Tallahassee in January 1978. There, under an alias, he blended into college life. But his bloodlust remained unchecked. On the night of January 15, 1978, Bundy entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. In a frenzy lasting barely 15 minutes, he bludgeoned and strangled 4 young women. Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy were killed. 2 others, Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler, survived but sustained horrific injuries. Bundy used a piece of firewood as a weapon, biting one victim so savagely that his dental impressions later served as crucial evidence in court. Still, he wasn't finished. Only weeks later, Bundy abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from her junior high school in Lake City, Florida. Her body was found 2 months later, hidden in a pig shed, sexually assaulted and murdered. In February 1978, Bundy was pulled over while driving a stolen car in Pensacola, Florida. He gave a false name, but fingerprints confirmed his identity. Finally, his reign of terror was over. Bundy's trial for the Chi Omega murders began in 1979 and became the first televised murder trial in U.S. history. Americans were fascinated and horrified by the charismatic young man accused of monstrous crimes. Bundy, ever the narcissist, insisted on representing himself. He cross-examined witnesses, delivered opening statements, and worked tirelessly to manipulate the proceedings. At one point, in a bizarre courtroom stunt, he proposed marriage to Carol Ann Boone, a former co-worker who'd moved to Florida to support him. Because the proposal occurred in court before a judge and was accepted, it constituted a legal marriage under Florida law. Boone later bore Bundy's child while he sat on death row. The evidence against Bundy was overwhelming. Eyewitness testimonies, fibers, hairs, and bite mark analysis linking him to the Chi Omega murders. The jury deliberated for less than 7 hours before convicting him. He received 2 death sentences. A second trial in Orlando for the murder of Kimberly Leach yielded a 3rd death sentence. While on death row, Bundy continued to manipulate the legal system, filing appeal after appeal. He granted numerous interviews, weaving shifting narratives about his crimes. Initially, he denied everything. Later, he confessed to at least 30 murders, though investigators believe the real number could be far higher, possibly exceeding 100 victims. His confessions often seemed calculated, as if he were dangling secrets to delay his execution. In his final days, Bundy tried to blame his crimes on pornography addiction and an inability to control violent sexual urges. Many saw it as a last-ditch attempt to feign remorse and avoid the electric chair. His efforts failed. On January 24, 1989, at 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Outside the prison, crowds gathered, some holding signs that read, "Burn Bundy, burn." When news of his death spread, cheers erupted, a rare moment of unity among those who'd followed his gruesome saga. Ted Bundy's life is the ultimate study in contradictions. He was intelligent, articulate, and outwardly charming, qualities that enabled him to hide his monstrous urges from those around him. His story shattered the comfortable stereotype of the deranged, visibly crazy killer. Instead, Bundy was the nightmare lurking behind a handsome face and a polite smile. He manipulated friends, girlfriends, co-workers, and even the justice system itself. He blended so seamlessly into society that even those closest to him, including Ann Rule, who sat beside him at a suicide prevention hotline, never suspected the depths of his depravity. Bundy's crimes left devastation in their wake, destroying families and forever scarring communities. Yet his story continues to fascinate and horrify. Psychologists, criminologists, and true crime enthusiasts dissect his life, searching for clues that might explain how a man so seemingly normal could harbor such darkness. In the end, Ted Bundy stands as one of history's most terrifying reminders that evil can wear a friendly face. His charm, intelligence, and sociopathic cunning allowed him to navigate the world unnoticed, hiding the predator within. For decades, his name has been synonymous with unspeakable cruelty, and his legacy endures as one of the darkest chapters in American true crime history.